Yeah, you've got the voice of an announcer, like a or an 800 number or a 900
So
number. What is that?
I am pondering in my retirement life, which is 5 years down the road, 4 years down the road, of doing like voiceover work. We'll see.
Man, yeah, you could absolutely do voiceover work. I'm going to just ask you very short questions today and I'm just going to let you go. And I don't know, I might just lie down and have you talk in my ear.
You'll be listening to the smooth stylings of Kristen Zeman today.
Oh, yes, you are so hired.
The Hollow Bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes.
Welcome, listeners, bunnies, to our Hollow Bunny podcast. If you are joining us for the first time, thanks for being here. We welcome you to our leadership podcast. I'm Kristen Zeman, and I'm here with my Hawaiian guest, co-host Sylvia Moyer, because she's in Hawaii right now. We are both aloha. We are both former police chiefs, but this podcast is not just for cops. It is for anyone who is interested in talking about life, leadership, and the lessons that we have learned about both. And those lessons fill up the Hollow Bunny, which is why we call it the Hollow Bunny podcast, because it's a metaphor for leaders who lack substance. And you know how that is. You bite into a bunny and it's hollow and you're expecting it to be solid. And sometimes people are like that. So this podcast started because we were being really judgy one day together on the phone. And then we decided we should make this into a podcast. So that's why we're here. So Sylvia, why don't you tell us who is filling our bunny today?
All right. It seems like this is an audition for the next career, but we get to hear about the 23-year career of Bobby Hollis, who's the deputy chief up in Lacey, Washington. He grew up in California. He's done a bunch of stuff. If I read you his resume, you would just shit. You'd say this guy has done a lot of stuff. He's been a field training officer, a PIO, a SWATologist. So, he's a studly dude in a boy's medium shirt. He did a lot of stuff as he rose up through the ranks and supervised school resource officers and IT and emergency management, a lot of stuff. We are going to explore that. We're also going to explore kind of Bobby's path and how he got to where he is and some of the leadership stuff he learned along the way. And something that we're finding, Bobby Hollis, is that the listeners of the Hollow Bunny podcast, they pull over, they write down a thing or two, and it starts enriching them. So this is the platform. Kristen is our producer today, so she's going to have some sound effects. I think cue the applause, Kristen. Here's Bobby Hollis.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being invited on to the podcast today. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous because I've been following the two of you on the Twitter machines for a little while and just watching your career arcs and everything like that. So to be here talking with you about leadership, all things leadership is, I don't know. Does it get any better than this? I don't think that it does. I think this is This is about it. If I had to hang up the badge today, I could do it.
DC, listen, you are right to be nervous because, we have millions of listeners.
Yes.
Our sponsors are Fortune 100 companies. The stakes are high here is all I'm saying. And Sylvia said that people pull over to write down little nuggets of wisdom. But when they hear your voice, they might just crash. They may crash. They might not even pull. They may just crash their car because they'll be like, what is that?
This? What's
hands
going
will
on
come
here?
off the steering wheel and go like, it'll just wash over them.
Yeah.
This is true. So I feel like this is an
this
audition.
This is the best part. It is an audition for your next career, but this is the best part about being retired is that, I can, call your voice sexy and not have to worry about any repercussions.
None whatsoever.
I know.
You're the
I love
CEO
that.
of your own company. What are you going to do? Fire yourself? You're fired. You're disciplined. What?
Exactly.
Come on.
Oh, I'm giving myself a raise. Are you kidding me? So
Right.
thank you so much for being here, DC Hollis. We crossed paths back in the day, and this has been a long time coming to get you on this
Absolutely.
show.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're here. And I take credit for introducing the two of you because when I found out that your parents lived close to where something there was a connection. I was like, oh, you have
Marin
to
County.
meet this gentleman still, and
Yep.
yeah. So I'm a connector basically.
You
That's what
are
I am.
indeed, and I definitely appreciated that. Maybe we'll just dive right into it. I mean, that is how we got connected. I grew up in Marin County, and it was kind of funny to hear that Sylvia was going to be taking a job there and leading the sheriff's department as the number 2 out there. And funny story, my folks live about a mile away from where the headquarters are, and growing up in Marin, it was for me it was entertaining if nothing else. But yeah, I would say that my experience there is different, but a lot of my experience there did help kind of mold me into who I am today. My dad was a former Army. He was in the military for about 20 years. My brothers and I, we always kid him because he took him 20 years to figure out how to get out of the Army. He was that guy. And my mom is Japanese. And so I'm half black, half Japanese. And so just that experience all on its own created some kind of different, I guess I see the world in a little bit different ways. And my perspective on things have always been a little bit different. Growing up, I never did the normal sports. I was a water polo player. I played soccer. I swam. I finally learned how to run and did track like my senior year in high school. And then I decided to leave California and move up to Seattle, Washington to go to school at University of Washington. And and decided to stay here. Although when I saw Sylvia a couple months ago, my wife and I were looking at retiring in Arizona. And so I think I'm finally over the rain and everything like that. But
Arizona, really? Come
Yes.
on, come to Naples, Florida. Come to South Florida.
Don't do it.
The politics are terrible, but the weather is perfect. People are a little nuts, but the weather is perfect. I mean, that's all I've got for you. That's all I've got.
I do actually have a tie to Florida because my middle brother lives in Florida. And so
Okay.
I have a middle brother that lives in Florida. My youngest brother is in Georgia. He's on the east coast of Georgia there. And both of those two
Okay.
knuckleheads keep trying to convince me to go down there. And I said, you know what? As much as I love those two and as much as I enjoy the heat, what I don't like is the humidity and the big bugs.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's bad.
Yeah,
That's
the
where
big
I was
bugs.
There's a
going.
lot of bugs. Yeah. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't.
Bugs and
I
red
can't
hats.
oversell it. Wow, you went there. This is an
So,
apolitical.
Come on, Arizona's a dry heat. So you have this perfect world, right? I mean, you have your
Exactly.
undergrad and graduate
Look, we're fighting
from
over him.
UW.
We're
This is
fighting over
clear.
him is what we're doing.
You know what? I think you're right. Right here in front of all of the
You're
Hollow Bunny
wanting to come
podcasts.
where you live, and I want him to come where I live so he can talk in my ear all day long.
Come on, Kristen. I know where his parents live.
Okay, all right.
Oh.
You said you have 2 brothers. Do you have other siblings as well?
So I have an older half sister that she's also in the Bay Area, but that's about it. I have I'm married. I have a 18-year-old son, and then I have 2. My wife has 2 adult daughters from a previous marriage. So
So you mentioned your dad was military service. Thank him for his service.
Absolutely.
Was there anyone else in your family that's law enforcement, or is that exclusive to you? Are you the
both my brothers went into the military. My middle brother stayed in for 20 years. He did his 20, and then my youngest brother stayed in for a couple years, but now he works for the Department of Homeland Security. And he's over. The reason why he's in Georgia is he's part of their training cadre. He's at their academy right now. So he helps train the new agents that are getting ready to come out into doing field work. He's been doing that for, a long time.
Okay. So you guys
Okay.
have service just embedded in your blood.
Yeah,
Right.
Go
yeah,
ahead.
and
So,
that's one of the things that kind of when I left home, I wasn't really I also wanted to go in the military. I know that you're a big fan of the Air Force, and that was where I wanted to go. I wanted to be an A-10 pilot, but for whatever reason, I got into my ROTC program, and it just, I guess because I was 18, thought I knew it all. I didn't want to be bossed around by anybody,
Oh
and
boy.
decided, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy college life. I'm just going to see where life takes me. But with a degree in sociology, there's only so many things that you can do, and graduation started to get close. It's like, oh, I actually need to find a job and do something. And so I'm a self-admitted nerd. I'm a nerdy guy. I ask a lot of questions of folks, and so I found I was asking my professors a lot of questions, and they said, "Oh, you should go to graduate school or get into law enforcement." And I'd never thought of that before, and I thought, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." I like the idea of service. I like the idea of kind of teamwork. And at the time, while I was doing a lot of my studies, kind of looking at police work and law enforcement and everything like that, there was a half second for those firefighters out there where I may have considered the fire service, but I saw the light and went in the right direction because I like being out in the community. I like talking to people, and the idea of just responding to stuff wasn't entertaining to me. And so I like the idea of being out there. I didn't like being stuck behind a desk, even though I'm stuck behind a desk now. But being able to get out, interact with community members, help solve problems, just meeting new people, that was truly exciting. And then obviously that service component was, I didn't realize that at the time, but I realize now that's something that I wanted to be able to help. I like helping people. I truly like helping people.
yeah. Yeah.
Whatever I can do to help others is, I'm there. Um, a little side story: my son is medically challenged. He had a liver transplant when he was really young, and so those service organizations that gave to us, my wife and I and our son, we try and give back as well. And so it's very important for us just serving our community, serving, helping others, whatever we can do to kind of make things better for people. We enjoy doing that.
Wow, wow, wow. Right? So service, you're not the kind of guy that would be a hose dragger. You're far too active and engaging to be a hose dragger, for sure. So, okay, so you've served a variety of roles, right? Throughout your
I did.
career, and now you're a second in command.
Yep.
Like how does the leadership, the thinking kind of differ with those roles, or does it?
It's I think as I moved up through the ranks, I had to kind of define who I was as a person and define my leadership style. And for me, it was and for years, and I guess this is another story. People always said, "Hey, Bobby, you're going to be a chief someday," and I didn't quite get it at the time because, like, oh no, I like doing my job. I like going out and being on patrol, responding to calls, and getting to having fun stories to tell, and all this, that, and the other. But as I never knew why people said that about me, but I think it's because I saw the world differently and I did things differently. I would like to think that had a part to do with it. And so when I was able to make sergeant, that was at the time where it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like being able to provide people with a little bit of direction. I like being able to interact with others. And then I like being able to listen to the men and women that I was, that I was supervising at the time, and kind of figure out what are the things that I can do to make it better for them. Right. And when I promoted as sergeant, so I've only been here at Lacey for, this is the start of my third year. But when I got promoted at my previous agency, we're the last agency was very busy, very violent city. And so it was a lot of jumping from call to call to call, a lot of high priority incidents. homicides, serious assaults, you name it. We were right in the middle of it. And being able to work with the officers that were doing the job, providing with the support, figuring out, hey, we need this type of tool for our vehicles because we can't get into apartment buildings, or we can't get into business if something happens. It's like, okay, well, I can run that up the chain, right?
Mhm.
And then learning that, leadership is influence, right? And knowing that through the connections that I've made with people over the years. And again, I'm just kind of I consider myself a pretty mellow person, even though some people might not see that way, but I'm laid back. I like to listen to your guy's story, right? I like to listen to other people's stories because to me, I'm just a cog in the wheel, right? But whatever I can do to help others, again, helping my crew out with getting a different type of tool, or, hey, this form is dumb. Why are we using this form? Oh, that's a great question. We've used this form for X number of years. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Talk to the bosses. Let's get rid of it, right?
Oh,
Just being able to do those things. That
yeah.
now is kind of the excitement for me.
You've just described something that it's probably because I'm in this particular place and time in my life. So I have the great privilege of being able to go into police departments now and consult. So not on top of the speaking, I go in and I do organizational assessments. And what you just said is one of the biggest issues that our people have, is that we don't have the tools and the equipment to do the things when things are broken, or when we as leaders are not thoughtful, or when we don't listen to the needs of our people, which is servant leadership at its very core. So what you've just described, sounds so, in the way you said is, well, I just get them the tools, but that is such a big deal to people. Imagine trying to do your job, without the necessary tools and the skills. I mean, people want to develop mastery. And so, when we all started in our organizations, we were that person is just trying to do our jobs well. And the best leaders, the ones that truly resonated with us, were the ones, that served us and the mission and got us what we needed. So you've just described that. So thank you for what you do. I think it's underrated, quite frankly.
And really, I learned from others, right? I mean, I'm fortunate that I had the privilege, the opportunity to work with other sergeants, other commanders, other assistant chiefs, other chiefs that modeled that for me. And so for me, I recognize that this is my personality. I realized, hey, this is the way that I want to go, and this is the type of leader that I want to be. It's still weird kind of saying that, even though I'm in this role, because people say that humility is definitely another one of my, personality traits. That's just who I am, because it's not about me. It's truly about wherever I am, right? It's about my crew. It's about the people. It's about the department. It's about the city. It's about the community members. Doing the things that I can do to help make their lives better is truly what brings me joy. So that's why I think I still keep doing this.
Yeah, that is awesome. Kristen and I have talked about this. We heard someone speak that said that the people at the top have a lot of authority and a little information. The people at the bottom of a hierarchy have a lot of information and very little authority. And what you're describing is a connective piece in terms of a leadership imperative to kind of connect the two, to meet people somewhere in the middle. And it's uncommon to have the kind of perspective and approach that you have, where people could say, hey, Deputy Chief, this is kind of what I need, and to give them space. So that development, I can't help but think that comes from kind of how you were raised and what you value.
It's from how I was raised. It's from a lot of things I valued, but again, it's a lot of it is, and like I said, I'm a self-proclaimed nerd, because I go out and I read all these books, the leadership books. I went back to get my master's degree a couple of years ago and learned even more then, and being able to kind of help understand, well, what is it that a leader's role really is, right?
Yeah.
And it really begins with listening. It does, you do have to have a set of values, because I've seen leaders that are not like me that have done horrible things to departments, right? and they've done horrible things to people.
Oh, yeah.
And that, and
Hello,
those,
bunnies.
yeah, yes. And those are the folks where I kind of go, okay, I can still learn something from you. A lot of times it's what not to do. Yeah, I think in a role like what we have, it's really important to be able to listen to not only the folks that might be to the left and the right of you, but you have to listen up and down as well.
Sure.
And then to also, the other thing is to be able to have the people that can say, "Hey, Bobby, I think you're going down a wrong path," right? To kind of grab me by the collar and pull me back if I'm about to
Right.
step off a ledge. And if I haven't developed if my relationship isn't good enough for that to occur, I could send the whole department into a very bad direction. And so I definitely don't want to be so forceful. Like, I know what my role is, but I have to still have the ability for people to tell me no and say, and this is why, right? And so I over the years, I'm trying to get better at when I say something, also being able to explain, hey, why? This is the reason why I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So even when I have to tell somebody no, I had to tell some folks no a couple days ago, and they're like, I don't like it, but I get it. The logic is sound. It makes sense. Why understand, salute smartly, carry on. And, after they walk out the door, I don't hear, through my other, ears that are throughout the department, I don't hear, bad things going on. They just, hey, this is what happened, and we're able to move on, and there will be a different opportunity next time.
Well, you just raised an interesting point, and Kristen kind of, shined a light on it. Yeah, hello bunnies, but there's this other, like the toxic bunny. That's like the rotten ass person that's in the organization. And so, I mean, there's a distinguishing characteristic there, right? And so what you described was the trust that they have based on your credibility and your humility. Because I can't help but think that people see that you're about the greater good, right?
I definitely try and be that person, say what I mean and mean what I say. And I'm not stabbing people in the back. I'm not talking bad behind people's backs, because especially in this position, all eyes are on me. And if you're that person, people can quickly know if they can even come to you and talk to you about anything without their business being out in the world.
Right. And you said you're a self-proclaimed nerd. You read lots of books. So how many times have you actually read Kristen's book?
So I've actually read Kristen's book 22 times. It's not just 20 times. It's one of the, it's right up there with, there are some other famous authors. You may have heard of Malcolm Gladwell and Outliers, and you may have heard about, there's just all these other books, and I have to put them up, Kristen, as a matter of fact, I'm not sure if people have read this book, but this is a great book. It's, people should pick it up, have a chance to read it. It will do wonders for your life.
He's holding up my book, Bunnies. Okay, two things on that. Thank you for reading. And then the other thing is, when I write my next book, could you narrate it? Because 100%. Your voice is way better than mine on Audible. Love that. And thank you. I appreciate that. I want to go back to a couple things that you've said, because you said them so quickly that I don't want people to miss what you said. One of which is how people pull you aside, and tell you the truth, and there is something that is so important that we don't talk about enough. And that's our truth tellers, the people who call us on our bullshit. That's why this podcast is explicit, because we can curse, that actually have the courage to do that. But the only reason that they can do that successfully is because you do have that humility to say, okay, I'm listening. And I think it's so important that we remember that when our people don't come to us and complain, or tell us what the problems are, what's wrong, then we are failing as leaders, because that's when apathy sets in. And to me, I think that is the disease that we need to fight, is that apathy of, you know what, I don't care. I don't care enough to say anything, because they're not going to change anything anyway. And that is what hardens our hearts. So the idea that people can come to you and say, that was the other thing. And then the second thing you said is, I just had to make a hard decision the other day. I had to say no to someone, and this is what I have found in my years of leadership, those times that I failed, then there have been many, there were the times that I didn't communicate the why behind the do, where I failed to communicate and I just made a decision super quick, or just said no, without being thoughtful and giving feedback to say, okay, so here is why we can't do that. And what I have learned is that when we practice communication versus notification, then people, they truly understand. Now, they may not agree with it, as you said, they may be upset, but at least they will walk away and they will say, I absolutely understand the reason that you made that decision. So thank you for highlighting both of those things for our listeners.
Yeah, it's really important to have people that can tell you the truth, but you can't go in there expecting it, right? And I think one of the things that helped me develop some of those folks that were willing to tell me the truth was, again, I point back to listening, right? Being patient and listening. I've only been at this agency for a few years, and so I come knowing stuff from my previous agency. I don't know the history here. I don't know the people here, and so I have to walk around. I have to get out. I went to trainings to talk to people and just kind of go through the trainings with them to kind of show them, hey, I'm here understanding what you do, right? Or trying to understand what it is that you do. And I think that, our line of work, law enforcement, police work, it's changed over the years as well, right? And so as we continue to, I hate to say it, but as we get older, these new younger kids that are coming in to replace us, they have, there's more expectations, there's different expectations. And so there may have been a time in which you could have gotten away by just saying, nope, we're not doing it, and you move on. Mm-hmm. But that, I think over the time, it creates a lot of separation. Now, just being able to explain the why and just being able to, go through, talk it through with people. Because sometimes, and there have been times where I was getting ready to say no, and someone brings a piece of information that I didn't know or didn't have, and it's like, oh, you know what? Let me reconsider then. Sometimes I continue on my path of no, but sometimes I change course and it becomes a yes. And without those relationships that you have with people in your department or your organization or your place of work, wherever, you're not going to be able to truly accomplish your goal. You won't be able to, finish that project. Maybe the project doesn't succeed like you want it to. You have to have those people, but you have to build those relationships. And I truly believe it all starts with listening.
Wow. That Hollow Bunny podcast listeners, that is a big, big piece. It's give people the space to listen. And Kristen talks about this a lot, the distinction between notification and communication. And we talk about dialogue. It comes from the Greek word dialogos, right? Get through the meaning of the word to really understand. And I think that's what you're talking about in that kind of pre-decisional kind of space. And perhaps even that questioning post-decisional space that you may just readjust. And that's a really powerful piece. How do you describe how one would pay attention to that or develop that for all of the Hollow Bunny podcast listeners? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I thought it was, this will be arrogant of me. I thought it was just something that I had. I just had, this natural ability to listen to people.
Oh, I wish people could see the eye roll. That was delicious. Oh, damn. I'm going to take that and just, wow. Okay.
Package it all together. We're gonna take this worldwide. It's going to be awesome. But I've learned that it is something that you truly can develop over time, right? Okay. And it does take practice, and you have to be intentional in what you do. And so for me, when I have somebody talking to me in my office, or I'm talking with my family, I try, and my wife will call me in on it all the time. So I love her. I appreciate her doing this to me, but distractions go away, right? And so I will set my phone aside. I don't bother with my emails if I'm at work. And so I'm paying attention to the person that I'm talking to, and I'm listening to them. And I try not to, I try and let them finish their thought. I try not to um, jump in and say, "Oh, you mean this?" I try to be patient. And again, it's practice, right? You have to. No one gets good at this overnight, and I would say that I'm still a work in progress, right? Everything that I do is, I there's nothing set in stone. I'm still very moldable, like clay, and so setting aside those distractions, being able to maintain positive eye contact, good eye contact with that person, and then I like to ask questions. Well, tell me why you think that, or how did that come about? Tell me more, right? A lot of people just tell me more. Tell me more about what you're saying, what you're doing. Those are some very simple things that you can do and just take time, and people will know. And I'm sure we've all seen leaders where they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you know what? Go ahead. Yeah, what do you say? Yeah, I'm listening. I'm just multitasking right now." Multitasking, to me, I don't think is really a thing, right? The human brain doesn't truly multitask. We can do a bunch of things all at once, but we're not really multitasking, if you will.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
we're a lot worse at it than we think we are. And
Correct.
I aspire to be you because one of the things I'm challenged about is being present, because I just actually wrote a blog post about this because, it's part of that always, the need to always continue moving, going. I'm constantly striving for the next thing, that I don't stop in the present, and relationships suffer from that because I'm all over the place thinking about all of the things I have to do. And so you're inspiring me to concentrate that as my New Year's goal. I don't believe in resolutions, but just I always try to improve myself every year. But another thing that you had mentioned was about that agility of being open minded. Is that, when your mind is made up and you're about to say no to something, you leave a space open. That not only is that listening, but to me, that is a high intellect on a higher plane, where you're able to hold two opposing thoughts at once. Is that, hold on, I think this, but you're trying to convince me otherwise. And instead of doubling down on your belief system, then it's staying open to the prospect that you have something to learn in this situation. And the fact that you can allow someone to change your mind in those moments, again, speaks to that higher plane. So I think that's appropriate for our listeners as well, as in leadership positions, is to keep that agility, to be curious that, maybe there is a better answer, than the one that you're set on.
Yeah, what is the great Aristotle quote? Aristotle was known to have said, "It's the mark of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it."
hmm
And isn't that
Yeah.
kind of that mindfulness, that pause, that humility to say, "Okay, I'm going to entertain this idea. I don't have to accept it." And that, coupled with the agility you've talked about, Deputy Chief, is a big, big deal in terms of how you're viewed as a leader.
and that's one of those things that I hope to, whether you're working in police work or whether you're working in the private sector, is that ability to kind of, there can be two truths, because different people see things and see the world and experience the world in very many, in a variety of different ways. And so
Mm-hmm.
just being able to accept that, and yes, your answer might be the right answer for you, but if you've closed yourself off to those other possibilities, you're not going to be able to either make yourself or your organization or others better, because you're already kind of set. Hey, this is the parameters, this is the box that I want to live in, and I'm happy living in this box. Man, this world is so much bigger than that, right? And there's so many different things that we can experience, and you know different people with different outlooks and different perspectives. And I think, as I've gone through this career in police work, that's what I've really enjoyed, because, they talk about, uh, we want people in this line of work to be from the community, right? Well, we interact with community members with different ideas from different places all the time. And so my hope is that, yes, there are certain things in police work that we might have to do tactically to make sure that we remain safe out on the road. But we should have a variety of ideas about how to achieve a particular goal, right? And it's not necessarily to win per se, but really we just, I guess my mindset is, um, I want to get better, right? When I was looking at, here's another story. So I kind of fell into this job. I wasn't truly looking to leave my last agency, but in the effort to try and become better, I thought, you know what, I'm going to throw my name in the hat. There's going to be other qualified folks that are out there. I'll be able to get some feedback about the things that I want to work on or need to work on. And as I continue this journey, I'll be able to continue this, continue working on myself in this area. And much to my surprise, I ended up number one. So here I am. But it was
That's kind of,
for me, people, people were like, man, I can't believe you're leaving here and so on and so forth. And I said, part of my goal in life is not necessarily to be stagnant and to be comfortable. I do want to challenge myself. I do want to learn other things. And there's so many things out there that I don't know. And I want to be able to try and experience it all, because part of life, I think, is that perspective, right? You're bringing perspective that you can kind of see from your experiences, whether you travel, whether you're, whether you're an investigator, whether you're a SWAT person. There's so many different perspectives that are out there. And when we get all those perspectives in a room and actually listen to each other, that's when we're able to accomplish truly great things, right? Because no one person does it alone. We have to work together in order to achieve that goal.
Yeah, you're dropping nuggets to all of our listeners, and you just brought one that I think we need to shine a light on as well, and that's that feedback. That we don't often create mechanisms to ask for feedback. It's unless someone volunteers to come to you and say something. But I learned this phrase from my daughter in the Air Force, who said, "Fight for feedback." That is one thing that she learned, and I took that to the police department when I was still there, and I try to utilize it to this day. And I don't think that we do that enough as individuals. And there's a lot of people listening who aren't in leadership positions. There's a lot of people listening who are parents, that primary in their lives, and that's their proudest title. And it's so interesting about feedback, because you don't even have to be in a formal position of authority to ask for feedback. But I was talking to a good friend of mine who's got 4 little girls, and she was telling me that every once in a while she'll pull each one of them aside and say, "How am I doing as your mom?" And the older one will come up with things. "Well, Mom, you forgot to do X, Y, and Z." And she's like, and then the younger ones, are like, "You don't give me enough candy," but it struck me. I have never heard that from a parent before. And Carrie Hill, this is a shout out to you in Scotland. We've got listeners in Scotland. So that's
worldwide. The podcast is worldwide.
Yep. Yes. Carrie Hill Gray was the one who told me that story. And I love that. And it just speaks. So again, whether you're in a leadership, but that's another thing that I want to do more of, is asking people in my life, how am I doing as a partner, as a mom, as a friend? Am I doing okay? So man, that fight for feedback is a really, really important thing. And it can help us as individuals, as leaders, and for our community.
Yeah, and fighting for that feedback also helps you grow as well, right? Because it's not, sometimes I think people think, oh, I only get the feedback when I've done something wrong. No, you can get the feedback when you've done something right as well, because, as we continue on our careers and our paths, you want to be able to teach others, hey, these are the steps that I took, or these are the steps that you took, or whatever the case might be. And so not only looking at the times where, oh man, I messed up, I just need to get some feedback. It's like, oh man, I succeeded. What went right? Because it's possible that you could do all the correct steps and end up with a bad outcome, or you can take all the right steps and end up with a poor outcome. And so being able to understand that, hey, feedback is, a friend of mine told me feedback is a gift. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but it should be something that you are striving for. And that's, again, my hope is that people are looking, when they listen to the world famous Hollow Bunny podcast, that they're looking to improve themselves, right? They're looking to strive to be better. They're looking for those little nuggets that will make them a little bit better on this day. And I think that feedback loop for both positive and negative is really, really important.
Yeah, and that's such a cool point, because we talk about these micro movements, right? These little move the needle just a little bit, but in the aggregate, you really affect some significant change, and that is really remarkable. When we look back at our careers, we make micro adjustments, and that's what you've described, and making these micro adjustments for this aggregate real significance in terms of your leadership, Bobby. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the conflict between these roles that you have as a member of communities of color and as a police leader. What can we really learn from your experience in that real difficulty?
That's a great question, and it's one that always is. It's kind of tough for me to answer, only because, again, I know that I see the world in a very particular way.
Okay.
My dad grew up in the South. He's from Georgia. He experienced a lot of hard times growing up where he grew up. I think that's why the military was the escape for him. Um, and we were fortunate, my brothers and I were fortunate that we grew up in lovely Marin County, that, our life wasn't rough, right? Both of our parents were at home. We had it better than most. And so I find myself kind of on a consistently walking a tightrope, if you will, right? Because
Okay.
while the color of my skin might tell me I belong to a particular group, I know that because of what I've seen in police work, what I've done in police work, people in police work are not evil. Everyone's trying to do the best that they can. But there are stories from, folks that have grown up in the South that are still occurring today where the police were the oppressors. And so
Mhm.
it's not because, it's again, those two truths can be, are still existing in that same space. And so a lot of times I find myself walking a tightrope between the two. And so for me, I look at it and I go, you know what? I'm here because my hope is, again, of being able to provide perspective for people. That's also a perspective, right?
Sure.
Of There's a perspective of people that dislike the police because of what happened to them and how they grew up. And those stories do get passed along. My dad has told me stories about getting stopped when he was in, literally rural Georgia, uh, and silly things occurring out there, right, at the hands of the police. And, me and my brothers, my sister, we got the talk about, as we started getting older, about, our, encounters with the police. But my dad did also tell us, said, as long as you're respectful, everything should be okay, right? If you're respectful and something goes sideways, then you let us know, then he'll go down, or mom will go down, which I didn't want that to happen, and they'll go talk with the sergeant, the lieutenant, the whomever, to figure out what was going on. But having kind of a foot in both sides of the world, I understand where people come from, and I understand why sometimes our profession causes a lot of pain for other people. And so I try and be mindful of that. And when I talk to people, I try and tell folks, look, I wasn't around in that time. I apologize for what may have happened then, but you can know that I'm here now trying to make things better, right? I'm trying to do what I can to provide that difference of perspective, to try and show that we are, that number one, that people are people, and there's bad people in any race, right? Black, white, yellow, purple, green, whatever. Our job as police is truly to protect our community.
Sure.
It's not to we're not looking to try and it's not we're not trying to occupy a city. We're not trying to occupy a county. That's not our role. Our role is to be a part of the community and try and help others. And I think my role, and this is the part that I love, is going out and talking with other groups, talking with other people, and just kind of spreading the word, about the good work that we do, but then also being able to bring back to the police department some of the stories, right? The horror
Yeah.
stories. And
Yeah.
this is kind of a more of a gender thing, but this past summer I had the chance to go to IACP's Women's Leadership Institute. And so I was the only male in the room. And to hear some of the stories that a lot of these women told were truly heartbreaking, because I'm sure the two of you may have experienced similar things, right? And Kristen, I know just from the book, you've had your fair share of tormentors, right? You wrote about it. But to hear that these things are still going on really bugs me. And so it was important for me, when I was listening to these stories, to come back to the PD. And even when I'm talking with my friends from, my other agencies, is, hey, I had this great experience. Let me tell you this story, or let me tell you the things that we can do to try and make things better for women in law enforcement, or for other folks that might be, other diverse people that we are trying to get into our line of work. Because those stories are truly important. And like I said, I know the two of you have your own fair share of those stories, but it was important.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, nothing at all. Nothing to see here. Just keep moving.
No tightrope
It's really
walking
important
for
to
us.
kind of reflect on that.
Sure. And Bobby,
Yeah.
I think, each experience really does reflect, that person's kind of path, that unique experience. What puts us in conflict with communities is we're human beings that don't always do it right. And we have not been the right and appropriate societal actor in policing to handle the array of issues that we handle. And that's tough. And we are the reflexive muscle of the government. And we have some bad actors, all of that. We've often said that there's no one tougher on a bad cop than a good cop. And the tightrope that you experience had put a lot of us in a place where we did not know how to support our men and women of color that are in policing. And I think that's something that is a topic for us to explore in the future. I could tell you that your humility, your discipline, your bearing, your tact, your dead sexy voice, right?
Yeah.
All of that. But
You
really,
two are too much. But this is why, again, I feel very fortunate just to be in
the
your
club.
all presence. I mean,
You're in the club. So
yeah, you totally are.
And you go read that book 30 times, then we'll give you a legit, cred. But
I'd like to get like a jacket, maybe, that I feel like a leather jacket, that kind of, reimagining blue on the back, and Kristen's picture can be on the front. I feel like once I get to that point, then
Bobby Hollis, you had me at hello. Thank you. There were so many fillings for this bunny today. If I don't even know, I mean, seriously, the bunny is exploding. That's what's happening. The bunny is exploding. So not only do you have a remarkable voice, but also everything that you say is just magical. So thank you for being here today. We really appreciate
Bobby
you taking
Hollis.
the time. And I know our listeners appreciate all of the wisdom that you have dropped today. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much, Bobby.
And I appreciate the two of you. Definitely appreciate the time today. Appreciate the work that you all have put into, getting this podcast up and running. So thank you for letting me participate in this today.
Well, you teed me up for the outro. This is where I say that Ted Madden is our producer, but I am the producer today. I alone, and I am doing such a great job.
She's drunk with power. Drunk.
I am drunk with power. I can make all of these noises in the studio.
Confetti.
It's so powerful to have all these buttons here. So anyway, Todd Madden does produce this podcast, and he really does a remarkable job. And the song that you are about to hear was written and performed exclusively for the Hollow Bunny podcast by my very talented son, Jacob, and his accomplished friends. So if you like our podcast, please subscribe. Listen, please subscribe. There are so many people that listen to the
Yes.
podcast because we read the analytics, people. We read the analytics, and yet that doesn't coincide with how many people like it. And I know you like it. Don't even try to say you don't. So please like it, subscribe to it, review it if you've got some words that you would like to say, only if they're kind. Tell everyone you know about it. If you don't like it, what do you know? Keep filling your own bunnies with substance, and please keep adding substance to others. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
When you look inside, what do you find? Are you content to fall behind? When you lose your way and you've lost your why, have courage and get ready to fight the hollow bunny. When the way ahead is covered in smoke and you're tired and scared and you're losing hope, you'll open your heart and your eyes and see a challenge and a question. Why not me? To fight the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. When the challenge ahead scares you to death, you tame the imposter inside instead. To change the world, you've got to start small. It takes a leader to say, I don't know it all, and I know I'm gonna fall, but I'll pick it up and come back stronger, failing forward and moving onward, doing the hard thing and the right thing, forever fighting the hollow bunny. And we all feel hollow sometimes, but the monsters are only in your mind. It's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're brave and kind, you'll be alright. If you fight the hollow bunny. If you're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. You're tough on the outside but empty within, something's gonna crack, you've gotta start again. The monsters